This is the Small Town Business Podcast. My name is Tyson. The podcast is brought to you by the Small Town Marketing Group, an online marketing course for small town businesses. Today I'm chatting with Aaron Hunsaker, the owner of the Harkness Hotel, which includes a salon and spa located in McCammon, Idaho. It's a town of about 800 people, if I'm getting that right. So welcome, Aaron.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and get started. So tell me a little bit about the Harkness Hotel and Spa and Salon that you have.
All right. So our hotel is located, like you said, in a town of 800 people. We took over a building. It's kind of the main building in town. It's a 1906 historic bank and mercantile building that we purchased a few years ago, and it needed extensive renovations, and we decided to turn it into a hotel. Was the first thing we put in. And the building, it's a mixed use building. It's got all these different spaces, and so a couple years later, we put in the salon and spa, and next up on our list to do is a restaurant.
Oh, awesome. I'm excited for that. And so tell me about what inspired you to open this business in McCammon.
Well, it actually started out as a joke. Um, my
Many
wife
good
and I,
businesses, right?
yeah, it wasn't one of those things like a lifelong dream of opening a hotel. It wasn't anything like that. Um, my wife and I, we lived back in Washington, D.C. at the time, and that's where we'd met. And when we started our family, we decided we wanted to be closer to our family um, and wanted our kids to grow up around their grandparents and cousins. And so we started looking for a reason to move west. And at the time, I ran my own little designed build firm, and we had joked. It started when we got married out here, and then there was just nowhere to stay, and that's what started it. We're like, somebody should find a cool building and put in a hotel out here, and it was just something we would joke about all the time that we were going to do that, and not at all serious. And then when we decided we wanted to move out here and needed a reason, that came up, that idea. I think my wife brought it up one day, and talking led to actually serious discussions about it, and got online and started looking at buildings, and it was very impromptu. I think we flew out and looked at a whole bunch of old buildings, and within a month we had put in an offer to buy this one, had sold our home in DC, and we're moving out here. We didn't have a place to live.
Oh man.
Looking back, I don't know what we were thinking, but we just jumped in and started doing it, and now here we are with a hotel and a spa and other businesses on the horizon. So it was kind of something that we thought it had a merit. It wasn't something that thought, oh, this is really what we want to do. We thought it would be cool, and that we were young enough and naive enough, I guess, to try it.
Yeah, and I
Didn't
think
really.
a
Oh, go
good
ahead.
lesson that a lot of people can learn is like, everybody has ideas, but doing you did some basic research and found that there's probably a need and it had some legs and you just went for it. And I think that's something that the fear of failing is a big problem in business today. And I think that's something that you kind of were able to overcome and just go for it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I've had people ask us since then if, knowing what we know now, would we do it all again? And I usually I would say yes, but I think I would do it. I might approach it differently, and I think we wouldn't be where we are now because we would have been a lot more cautious.
Hmm.
We didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And sometimes caution's good, but sometimes it's bad. Sometimes it causes you to not do something that could work out well. So,
yeah. So we feel fortunate that it all worked out, and I never worried that it would fail. My biggest fear was that it would do mediocre, and
oh,
it's a big building that we bought, and it needed a lot of work, and we only had so much money to start it,
right.
and I thought it was gonna just do well enough to stay open, but I was gonna have to look at the rest of the building for years and not be able to really keep
I
moving
see.
forward. And that was kind of my fear, and that has not been the case at all. We've been able to progress and renovate and do things as fast as we actually can. So
Yeah, and it's a beautiful building, and you've done an awesome job. I grew up, so for those listening, I grew up in the town going to that building when it was a grocery store and there was apartments in the top, and what you've done to it is amazing. And anybody listening that's coming through East Idaho should definitely book a room at the Harkness because they're very unique. Aaron, if I understand it right, you were an interior designer before this, and so you use that skill to design the rooms. Is that correct?
yes, yeah, that was about the only thing we had going for us when we started this. We had no hospitality experience. I joked that my original plan, I went to graduate school. I was going to be a history professor, and I kind of said I've done a complete 180 in my career, but I thought in all my schooling, I wish I'd taken a business class. I never did, but
Well,
that might have been
it's
helpful.
another thing that maybe was not such a bad thing. She kind of was able to do things the way you wanted to without knowing. So
Yeah,
the
maybe.
big question I have for you is, how are you getting customers?
Um, that's a good question. So, I mean, it's a mixture. That's one thing I don't think. Well, I've never been personally very good at, and I feel like we could improve in it is our marketing. Because we've never, I think for the first several years, everything we had was going into just getting the business physically up and running and managing the day to day. And so there wasn't really a whole lot left over in terms of money or time to promote it. Um, so we were kind of fortunate in the beginning, it promoted itself because it was so unique what we had done. So we got a lot of free publicity. Of course, we did like the social media stuff, which to me wasn't, we didn't do really any paid marketing. We got we're part of the local chambers of commerce, so we get a lot of promotion from Lava Hot Springs. Now I would say word of mouth is probably our biggest source of clients or of new guests. We get people in all the time that will say, I heard about it from my dentist, or I remember one time we had some people from, I believe it was Taiwan,
Oh,
and
wow.
got to chatting with them, and they mentioned that they had some friends in Taiwan that had mentioned us, that had stayed with us, and so
Oh, wow, that's
that's
cool.
why they were coming to Yellowstone and had to come and stay with us. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool that they found out about us over the other side of the world and came and stayed. And so we get a lot of that. We've won a few international awards, and that's actually really helped. That's put us on a different stage. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's just been a mixture of all kinds of different things. We get a lot of repeat guests, um, and we're a small enough business. We only have 10 rooms, so it's not hard to fill them.
Hmm.
Usually we have waiting lists of people wanting to stay, and we book well in advance. So I guess it hasn't been a problem that I didn't do a very good job of marketing. But it
Well,
has
I
still
think
survived.
one of the things that you and many small business owners in small towns don't or not that you don't recognize, but may not consider it as marketing is your product. And if
Mm,
marketing, the product is one of the biggest staples of marketing. And so you've created a product that is unique, there's demand for it, and people like it. And because of that, you've been able to generate revenue. And so, although you haven't paid for marketing, which is not a necessity, you've created a product that has created marketing itself. So, I think you've done a great job in that aspect.
mm. I would definitely agree with that. I think when we first started this, I would hear all the time from people that locals that they thought it would fail. People thought we were nuts, and we probably were, but back then I could tell from talking with people they didn't know what we were creating. They thought it was just going to be a motel, a place with beds, and they're like, "Why would anybody come here?" But
Yeah.
now I've learned what we've done and what we're now shooting for is more creating that unique experience for people, which I think they're looking for, and
Hmm.
that's why we kind of created our own market for it. And if we were just regular like everybody else, I don't think we would have seen the success that we have.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, personally, I've stayed in hundreds of hotels around the world for different things that I've been involved in, and your hotel that I've stayed in is unique amongst all of them. And so, as small town business owners, it's not enough just to have a hotel, which if you would have just created that, you or a motel, you probably would have failed. But you were able to find a way to make it different and unique. And so, for anybody out there that may have a restaurant or a hotel or anything, you got to find something to set yourself apart from what's already out there. And that's a huge part of it. So,
Yeah.
well, I do want to ask you just one more question um, before we end this, and that is well, I guess it's kind of a two-part question, but what's been the hardest part and most frustrating, and then what's been your favorite part of running this business?
Um, that's a good question. Um, I think there's been a few things that have been hard, and it's changed based off of the stage we've been in. I mean, initially it was financing. Um, we we learned when we decided to buy a building, we stopped telling banks what we were going to do with it. Because as soon as we said a boutique hotel in the middle of nowhere, we were no longer a good fit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we had to kind of
Good.
map out everything we had to get it up and going, and it worked, fortunately. So that was probably one of our first challenges. Um,
Okay.
I would say for ongoing, I was the maintenance side of it. In my mind, with what I'd done up to this point, I was involved in making these, people's nice homes and renovating, but then I had nothing to do with it. And now you, you've created something really cool and special and 5-star. You have to maintain it, and that's not as easy to do. It requires a very concerted effort. It requires reinvesting. And I think in my mind initially, I was kind of like, okay, we put all this into it. It's done. We can move on to the next thing. And that's not totally the case. Um, Another part that I've personally found hard with it, and fortunately we have an awesome staff. Um, but for me, this was more, and I would guess this is probably the case for a lot of people that put themselves into their business, that this was more than just a business to me. It was more than just a building. It was kind of a reflection of me. It was very personal. The design, I did probably 75% of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you're dealing in a service industry type business in particular, reviews and comments from people. And so like now I don't read our reviews. I haven't read them for years. Our staff reads them, and I'm like, if there's something I need to know, let me know. But otherwise, and overwhelmingly, they're positive. Um, but for me, I take it a lot more personally, and it's hard for me to separate the business from the personal aspect of it. That it's kind of my
Yeah.
baby. That's been a challenge for me. Um, my favorite part has probably been seeing what it's done for the community that we're in, for our employees. That now that's kind of what keeps me going. Is I feel like we're able to make a difference. That we're here to stay, and now we can kind of influence things more, both in the lives of our employees and in the community around us. And I'm starting to see that happen. And that was something I'd never considered when we started, that it would have any sort of impact in a broader sense. And we're starting to see improvement. We're seeing people interested in what we're doing and wanting to come here. And that I think in the long run, I'm interested to see. I think it has the potential to help kind of revitalize a small town, which I think the right businesses in the right locations have that potential, um, even if we don't realize that from the beginning.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that's our my end goal is part of this podcast and in my marketing career is I would be so happy if at the end of it I could say that I had some part in helping revitalize small town businesses and keeping them going and open as they compete with large corporations, big brands online and stuff like that. So thank you for that input, and thanks for chatting with me today, Aaron. I
Thanks for
really
having me.
appreciate your time and for being On the podcast today, we'll give you lifetime access to the Small Town Marketing Group's online marketing courses, and hopefully that can help you as you continue to add other parts to your business.
Well, thank you.
And that's all we have today for this episode of the Small Town Business Podcast.